Thank you so much for being here today in what we have decided is the OTT-worthy 90-minute roundtable. That is going to be fantastic, all about children's publishing and all about maybe just shooting new ideas at each other and coming together as an industry to talk about some very important things, especially about children's publishing, which is often forgotten in a lot of spaces. So it's really nice that we have this space and we have this time to talk about something we all care deeply about. I personally know so many people who are sitting here. They've mentored me, they've taught me everything I know about publishing, so it's a great honor. And it's going to be a very free chat where everyone is going to be chatting. If you have any points, please make a note of it. We will have an extensive conversation, questions round at the end. So when we talk about children's publishing, we often start with what we're producing, right? It's about, oh, this is the book that we're publishing this year, this is what our list looks like, these are the formats, markets, etc. But today we're specifically here to talk about the reader, about who is our reader, what are they reading, and how do we reach out to them a little bit better, a little bit louder, and make them interested in books even more, especially at a time where digital entertainment is sort of taking over all of our lives. Especially in a country like India, where reading is often framed as improvement, like we all start reading to learn. Reading is always seen as a tool of betterment, and it is, but it's often also not seen as pleasure. It's seen as something that's aspirational, something that's useful. And so what I think we would like to start the conversation with is, are children reading because they're told to read, or are they reading because they want to read? So I think I'll throw it open with a very open-ended question like that, and then we can kind of go from there and talk about maybe nitty-gritties and specifics. So anyone who would like to start, or I can just go by like a roll call situation.
Whatever works best for you.
Okay, Richa. Richa can start.
So, this question is not an easy one to answer because different people will have different opinions on this. But I can speak from my own experience in terms of when I am interacting with parents or I am interacting with children, and I find that children are interested in reading. And children are able to get to the right book. We often say that children are not reading because they're not getting to the right books, but children are getting to the right books that they're really keen on picking up and reading, as long as there is no gatekeeping happening from the adults. So the moment we come up with things like, oh, you are too young for this, you are too old for this, this is not appropriate for you, and so on and so forth. Parents, teachers, librarians, we are doing this to our children all the time. So the moment we stop doing that and we let children just be free with the books that they want to pick up, they will pick it up and they will read it. So yes, children are reading. In the case of picture books especially, for us it is also because, and all of you producing picture books will know, we have to also look at the parent who's going to be picking up the books, right? So our books have to be done in such a way that the child of course likes it, but before the child it is the parent who the book has to appeal to. And the parents are picking up books. The best part is that parents in India are really warming up to picture books. The entire concept of picture books, it's relatively new as a format, but they are taking to it, and they are kind of, they're devouring it with a kind of energy that has not been seen before. We'll come to the sadder parts of that, okay, the more limiting parts of that later, but to answer that question, yes, children are reading, yes.
So to add to what Richa said, I think to a question that are children reading because they want to or they are being asked to. So let me tell you, if they are being asked to, they will not read, right? So there are only two kinds of kids available. One who are active readers, second who are dormant readers. Dormant readers are the ones whose interest has not been awakened. As soon as you are able to bring around the right kind of books that appeals to their taste buds, then they would be awakened readers and then they'll start reading. So I think the gap is not in anything else. It's just about having books available of different genres, different kinds to them, because every reader is a different reader. We cannot kind of just pick up some kinds of books and say everybody has to read the same. It cannot happen, right? So it's active versus dormant, and I completely agree with Richa's point, and we were talking about data. So I'll just throw in a data here so that I can prove my point. If kids are allowed to pick up the book that they want to read themselves, without any pressure from either the parent or the teacher, there is 86% chance that they'll read the book. And if you ask them to do it, or give them a book and say, read it, and I've got anecdotal experience at my own home, my daughter is sitting here, it happened with her, so it will not happen. And I will illustrate with an example. You tell your kids as they're growing up, honesty is best, don't lie, and there's a phone ringing and you just tell your spouse, कह देना घर पे नहीं है. So कहने से नहीं होगा, देखने से होगा. So other thing that you can do as parents or teachers is, are you seen with books? If you are the role model and you are seen with books, you are seen reading, they will read, provided they have the choice of picking up the book themselves. And secondly, there is a variety of books available which can appeal to every different kind of readers.
I know, I mean, maybe all of you also have points to add here, but I want to just throw in a little complication into this question right now, which is, you know, you mentioned that as long as books are seen, books are found, there are as many books. And I think that is a problem as an industry we have solved. Our books, we have plentiful books. I think every single person who's sitting here, it's a testament of like the publishing lists that people are bringing out. So we do have plentiful books, and we also do have a lot of bookstores. We also have Amazon, who's happily sponsored us, sponsored this session. So we clearly do have all of that infrastructure, but there still is a gap. Like we all see the gap, there's a huge gap. So then what is the answer to that gap? There's not a magical solution, but if we were to bring that into the equation of, okay, kids are reading, as long as they're not told what to read, which is also a big sort of googly for us, because we're just like, oh, but then how do we get kids reading if they aren't supposed to be told to read? So just, what do you think then is the gap for us if there are books available and we are publishing enough books? And I think, Himanshu, you're a very interesting person to come in here, because, so I worked at Pratham Books for a while, and Pratham Books has the mission at Pratham Books used to be a book in every child's hand. And then a few years ago, the mission changed because we realized that it wasn't good enough to just put a book in every child's hand. It was unlock the joy of reading. So maybe you could go into that mindset shift as well, because I think it's interesting here.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think you're right. We've solved the access. You know, the lack of books is not a problem, right? I think it's lack of access to a greater extent, lack of access in the language of the child. Right, I think those are things, and you rightly said that if you look at the Pratham Books model, we've been working on the 3 pillars, which is create, access, and use. So when we talk about create, we've created, now we have thousands of books of catalog. Access, I think we've cracked it. We're not format agnostic. We're there on digital, physical, audiovisual, etc. I think it's the use, and use is something which is very important. I think to what both said, what we as a nation, I would say, need is that more agency needs to be given to the child. It's always our gray hairs and things, and I have read, you read, and I think that needs to stop. Secondly, I think the child of today really needs a different kind of an engagement. Right? Probably he wants to read today, wants to watch tomorrow, wants to listen the 3rd day, wants to enact the 4th day. Are we bringing those kind of engagement points? It's no more. So I think what we've learned all these years is that providing different formats, different situations to the avid readers. I classify a classroom in 3 levels. So there's an avid reader, there is an average reader, and there's a struggling reader. How are we supporting the struggling readers? Reading for pleasure, we are not a country. Honestly, we have to accept it, right? Then we are more of a 3 idiots model. Number laoge to ghadi, nahi to chhadi, right? then you also see that you have, you know, like book is being bought because it has to teach you something. I've been kind of camping a lot around that libraries should be outside of the learning outcomes, right? FLN and so on and so forth are the buzzwords nowadays that everyone is behind. But I think we must ensure that we are making what children want to read, and there's enough outreach that is required to find out what children want to read, right? I am just carrying a book, quite a lot of you may be aware. Now, you know, getting to know, this is a book about ghosts. When we went on to the ground, we learned that children really want to read fantasy. They want to read about ghosts. So are we really creating also what children want to read? You know, or we are just, you know, one, reading itself is a forcible activity, as I said, and then we are trying to force fit the thematic spread that we want to create. So is it our wish list as publishers, or is the wish list coming from the children's side? So I'll take a pause there, and yeah.
I think what I'd like to do is skip to Prajwal for a second, and then we come to you, Tina. Just because he said, are we creating what children want to read? And you're a first-time children's author. What was going on in your head when you were thinking of, I need to create this story? Are these burdens that we're putting on you as a writer? I'd love to know.
Thank you, Smit. I feel a bit like an interloper here because my book isn't out until later this year, early next year. But thank you so much for having me. So I primarily write pretentious, pedantic literary fiction. And I was sick and tired of writing about adults, man. So when the writing of a big book of many pages was not going anywhere, I decided it might be a good idea to just dabble with limericks, write silly things, write the fun stuff, you know, write the kind of stuff that I as a child wanted to read. So I wrote a silly little book about a little girl who lives in a Himalayan hotel. I come from Gangtok, Sikkim, and the story is based thereabouts. And she loses a dog, and she goes in search for her dog, and I mean, that's how the story unfolds. So my friends are of that age where they're having kids left, right, and center, okay? And I've noticed that middle class and upper middle class parents in India may not read themselves, but will buy books for their kids no matter what. Now, whether or not these children's books they're buying are, books by foreign writers or by, the one or two Indian writers who are popularly read in the children's arena, I do not know. But people are buying books. And that's when it occurred to me, why not just do this? Why not get the child in you out? Why not rediscover the joy of writing? And this is what happens to a lot of us, quote unquote, serious writers, or writers for adults. You embark on a book, it's too big, it's too ambitious, it becomes this unwieldy little thing, big thing. So you want to dabble with other genres to regain the joy of writing. And it's been a very different experience for me because, when you write about a children's book, at least for me, I didn't even know what audience I was writing for. The first question people ask you when you let them know you've written a children's book is, what age group is it for? And Tina, my publisher, is sitting here, and she will know that I do not know what age group I've written for. And so there are all these issues that I'm negotiating, and I hope the book is bought and read and enjoyed. So That's my 2 cents.
No, I'll pass the mic to Tina to say if you want to weigh in on all of this, but also the point that Prajwal brought up about I don't know what the age group is. So then, how are you as a publisher deciding what?
Based on that.
Just based on that, but also just in general, keeping in mind all of the ideas of like the reader.
I think everyone said, good stuff, and I think that, the fact that kids are reading, for us we have to believe that as publishers. I mean, we're publishing for children, and we do want, all the labor that goes into every book that we put out, that there's hopefully a reader out there. So that's one. But I think just the way this children's segment has grown over the last decade or more has been the most surprising. Even as children's publishers, we're really surprised by the amount of good publishing that's happening across publishing houses. So it's volume, it's good quality, it's a lot of choice. Now I think what we need is for kids to actually discover these books. And I think this is where we really wonder what is the way that, discoverability can be enhanced. And I think, sometimes book fairs are just the best places to see this behavior. And sometimes just standing there and seeing, there's a parent who wants a child to pick up something that's going to be that extra something. There's going to be a story, but there might be something else also, because I think Asian parents love their kids to be, know a lot, basically. And and otherwise, and you'll see the child going for the most frivolous thing, maybe picking up a picture book because that's what they respond to the most. So it's always good to see that tussle happening. And of course, if you try to step in, you're going to have to tread on that very uncertain sort of ground, because the parent will still think that they need value for money. But it's interesting. But I think, yes, going to discoverability, I think Amazon, while it's a great place to have all your books over there, but I think bookstores is where children's books really are, best sought after, best discovered, and for people to actually pick them up, see them, and that's the greatest access, I think, that, in terms of like, this is what you have, and this is what this is what you can read and give to your children, and I think that's what.
And how does that interact with your publishing, the way you're thinking as a publisher? How does that impact your commissioning? And I'd love, Sohini, if you could also weigh in on that after, and perhaps Saanya as well, especially from the point of view of an agent as well. So how does that affect your publishing
So I think,
list?
In terms of the publishing list, and I'm going to go with what, Neeraj said about, kids, if you leave them to buy what they want, it's about choice. But it's also something that you discover over time that, okay, humor might be one of their more favorite genres that, they like to, they like books that are funny. I think a lot of the top bestsellers are always stories that kids find themselves in, and there's humor there, there's a lot of, they discover similar situations that kids are living in, and I think that connection, when you make it, kids are likely to pick that book up. So I think that is the, when you're commissioning, I think you keep in mind the fact that, okay, what is it that kids want? I think sometimes as publishers, a really important thing is to plan your lists in a way that there are books that you feel kids must read, okay? So you put them out because educators are going to respond in a certain way, parents are going to feel that that's valuable, but you also have to think like a child, which is, okay, this is a book that's silly enough for a kid to want to pick up and enjoy, So it's balancing it between, okay, this is likely to be a bestseller, and this is a book that must be out there, so you commission accordingly. I hope I answered that.
I have follow-up questions, but I'll let them talk and then throw some controversial questions out there.
I'm going to carry on from there. So, I think within the trade publishing ecosystem, we probably have one of the largest backlist of, children's books. And I'd say like what we were publishing 10 years ago, we're not publishing that. We've, of course, evolved from there. And, earlier, I remember we were largely doing middle grade books because that was the sweet spot. And then in the last decade, we've also started catering to, let's say, a 0 to 3 or a 3 to 5 or a 5 to 7. And we didn't have like a large body of, curated lists for them earlier. But why did we feel the need to shift and do these books? Because there were feelers from the market that, there's a gap. while there were traditional players like Tulika, Karati, doing picture books, we also felt there was a market for, maybe a different kind of picture book. So essentially, we started doing books which were conversation starters because, again, when we talk of who is our audience, it's not one audience. I don't feel children are our only audience because this decision making is still through parents. So largely, I think when we are commissioning, while you put the reader at the center stage and that is your primary audience, but because the parents are making the decision, a lot of the commissioning that we do is, keeping in mind that the parent is going to pick up something where that they feel, there is a value add. And that value add could be as simple as pleasure reading at bedtime, or like we all spoke about, the entire, that learning component which Asian parents are obsessed with. So I think when creating a program, much as a publisher, I would love to do just picture books or, books with more entertainment value. But I think there is also the commercial side to it. And there is also, like as a publisher, you also want scale. You don't want to just create a niche list. So I suppose, there is that balance that one strikes, that you want to do the silly books and the fun books. But I think coupled with that is also the kind of books that, for instance, more soft curriculum books. So for instance, we've done this entire list of history books. So, so kids are learning history in school. But then the kind of books we would do on the Constitution or Indian history would be far from it, like non-academic, fun, beautifully written by a voice that would connect with them, filled with art, filled with, beautifully designed pages so that kids can access the same information in a much more accessible and entertaining way. So I think all these factors are kept in mind and borne in mind when one is creating a commissioning program. Because I feel it is not one audience we are catering to.
Okay. Would anyone like to respond to this? Or yeah?
Yeah. I really like that we spoke about fun. Is this working? Yes. Because I think that's one of the first things I mentioned to anyone that comes my way. Thank you. Whoever comes my way with a proposal, I would say, is it fun? Because we're also dealing with the fact that we want to build a habit. And I think that's one of the questions you want us to talk about later, that if it's not fun, you're not going to be able to inspire someone to build that habit, for them to want to go back to a book, to stay with it for more than 5 minutes. So I think in the process of building my list as I move forward, that's sort of the central pillar that I have. That's the only thing I
No, thank you. I think we've, yeah.
That almost goes back to this really sharp dichotomy we see at the award platform, on any of the award platforms. So whenever the children is the jury, it'll invariably be an absolutely wacky book that wins. If it's the adult evaluating and judging, it'll be a very, very, it'll have to be, right? Yeah. So, it all goes back to, if we are creating for those children who are reading it, but the children want something else. At that level, we are all gatekeepers. We are doing exactly what we should not be doing.
Yeah.
So, that's another thing that needs discussion.
So one point that I would add here is, and again, to bring in a bit of data, which is important.
We love data.
Right. So I've taken it upon me. Right. So when we did this report, this is called Kids and Family Reading Report. This was done, one can say that it's dated because it was done back in 2015. But Scholastic in US does it every 2 years, and when in 2015 we did it in India, UK, Australia, Canada, 4 more places, what we realized was that, the findings, while we feel that, every country would have throw up different findings, it threw up very similar findings, right? And one of the top things that kids want to read was humor. And it remained constant across the 5 places where we did. Only thing that varied was the percentage attached to it, right? And to add to it, so the top 4 criteria remained identical. It was humor, it was characters like whom I want to be, right? Who are smart, doing something. Then it was about books that make me learn something new, not from an academic standpoint, but make me learn something new. And there is a mystery to solve, or something that you're solving in that book, right? And all those 4 criteria were the top 4 criteria in all the 5 reports. It's only the percentage that changed. Now a bigger worry is that when we are trying to and building up your point, Sohini, that probably will give me my wish list. when we try to cater to the, and we all have to do it, unfortunately, when we're trying to cater to the parents' sensibilities and the teachers' sensibilities and also students, we're compromising. And which reminds me of my professor, who once said, if your one leg is on fire and another on ice, on an average you are fine. But are you? Right? So that's what happens when you're trying to kind of balance it between different stakeholders, right? And that's where sometimes we lose connection with the actual audience, which still is children.
Yeah.
That doesn't change, right?
I'm going to throw some fiery questions, or just, and then let's see what happens. But, so, you spoke about this report, about how the findings across the countries are similar. But don't you feel like the space for silly books in India is reducing? And in this need to balance commercial, the parent, buyer, the child, everything, we are losing out somewhere to the international books, which are able to do silly a lot stronger. I don't want to say better, but even their non-fiction. Like I was recently reading this book, which is climate non-fiction. It was called, my presentation today is about an anaconda. And its presentation is given by animals for animals. It's non-fiction, but they've managed to retain the silly. So then my question is, what does that look like for us to have to compete with these international books, which aren't accessible to all readers, which we are losing Indian readers to? So what does that look like for you as people in the industry? Why is international winning, or why are we not making enough space for silly books?
So I think international is winning because they're probably working on the things that they're seeing, right? And we're ceding that space to from an Indian author perspective, because probably we're not going out there and talking to authors in that earnestness that, what are we looking for, right? We've started doing that in the last 3 years. We're doing a lot of conversation with all the authors, where we share all these findings from global perspective as well as Indian perspective, and these findings are data point that can help us rather than that can make us feel, oh, things are not in shape, right? So all our data collection is always about things that we can control, things that can take us forward. So based on that, and we share it with our authors and say, look, this is what kids want to read. We share the data that we ourselves collect, because at Scholastic, sometimes it's very difficult to describe us, right? We are the largest children book publishers, but we are also the largest children book distributors. And at the same time, we are also the largest retail chain in this country, right? So we have so much data because we interact with kids. And we can use that data and talk. And I think what needs to be done is talking about the data. And that's one of the reasons why whatever report Scholastic publishes, it's available on our website free to everybody, whether it's being published in US or it's being published in India. It's available on our website as a link, free downloadable, right? It's all about using it the right way.
I'd love to come back to this point about data, because I do have more things to say about it. But just going back to the idea of international books and the idea of silliness,
yeah.
I wondered if I could also just give the space to Ujan to speak about from a design perspective, because that's the unique perspective you have here, right? You're looking at books, and most kids also look at books as maybe a toy first, maybe as something they interact with visually first. So from a visual point of view, where do you think silly fits within Indian books versus international books? I'd love to get your perspective on it.
So I'm going to try and do, because you asked so many questions.
I apologize.
And I was trying to think of all the answers that I could give for all those questions without having any statistics. So
we have 56 minutes, and at some point we will run out of steam. So
okay,
you have the
great,
stage for the next 20 minutes.
No, that's fine. So the thing is, children are very smart. Children are deeply intelligent. We don't give them enough credit for that. I think the number of ways you consume stories, the tactile nature that you consume stories is done in so many different ways now, that I think reading books is incredibly important. Because right now you're competing with a video game, a TV remote, an e-book, or anything that doesn't have that tactile nature of turning a page. Of course, the beautiful thing in that is that because kids are reading, and it is, like you said, the first way you engage with stories and visuals is through reading. For most parents, they're not going to literally give a 2-year-old a phone, and I don't think most people do that. I mean, sure, that has become something that's more prevalent now, but I don't think that's the most important thing that's still there. I think a lot of parents still want their kids to have a more written word first kind of introduction into the way they see the world. And I think that what you guys said about agency, access, is the only way that you keep that curiosity alive. You have events, you have, of course, ways where you can connect with the parents, tell them, this is the variety of books we have, this is what's on offer, these are the kind of stories we're telling. And of course, the second aspect to that is the visual aspect, right? And it's very different because, and maybe you can answer this, because you write long form, traditional fiction, non-fiction work, is that this may be a business where maybe you're the other way around, right? You are judging books by their covers because you're a 4-year-old and you see colors and you see fonts on a page, and all you need is someone to get you to ask the questions. If you think about it from a child's point of view, I think children are curious, but they don't ask questions. So I think it's about getting children to figure out ways to ask those questions oh, is this a book about ghosts or dinosaurs? And what does that mean? Does that teach me about anything? Does that teach me anything about biology, science, death? What are those things? And I think that's the kind of nuanced sort of trick that you can do with writing and picking things, commissioning stories that bring out that curiosity again. And I think visual communication has come a really far way in doing that, especially for public. It's such a powerful tool for all of them, to kind of use, and that's the only way they can kind of bridge that gap, is to kind of make things look fun, exciting, cool, thrilling enough for a parent to be okay, this could be interesting, but curious enough for a child to be that is something where I can ask those questions. So yeah.
This one thing that always comes to my mind. You see, there are some fantastic, absolutely nonsensical, crazy, zany, really brilliant books being done in Indian languages. Okay, not so much in English, not so many in English, that is. And I have a feeling that language we lose out. When we are doing a story in Hindi, for instance. I mean, those are the books that I've seen in the market, which are beyond brilliant in terms of how they bring out the whimsy right down to the child's eyes. We are losing because English, I mean, no matter howsoever we are English bred people, but English is not our first language. I mean, it is, but it is not. And, thinking in a funny enough way doesn't come to us naturally. We Indians are not all that funny instinctively. Okay, we always have this veneer of the serious about us. So I think we are better at doing serious books. I mean, I can say that as an author. It's easier for me to write a serious book than it is to write a fun book. Okay, so as an author pool, maybe we need to do better. As an editor pool, we need to do better with the books that we are doing in English. I mean, languages we are doing great, but I know there'll be a lot more coming out. So that's one area, that's one great, you were talking about the gap, right? The books which are coming from the international market are fun. Somehow we are not in our books able to get that fun element right still. We are trying, we are getting there, but it will take us some more time, I feel. Right? So, I mean, that's something that all of us need to, because you were talking about the gap. And the second is also because for the parents, and this again, I'm talking about the parents of picture book reading children, it's rather more fashionable to be seen with a book in their hands, international book, which they can then put on Instagram saying, I'm reading this with my child or for my child. So it becomes like a one-upmanship, which is huge in the metro, larger metros. Okay? So we are so as publishers, we can do very little about that. It's something else that's dictating there. So that's also widening the gap. Because now the international books are so freely available, which wasn't the case even till about 5 years ago. But now they are competing with the same price points, maybe cheaper. Quality is as good, even better. I mean, for the parent, you see, at the end of the day, the parent just wants to sit with the child. They've had a tough day. They have those 15 minutes with the child. They don't want to be getting engaged with something which is going to be heavy on their brain. Mom, why is it happening? You know, they just want a fun, freaky story. And we are not able to give them that. We are all publishers here. We are trying. I'm saying we are trying, but we are not trying hard enough, I feel.
Can I add to that?
This is a free-for-all conversation. Everybody please jump in. I want to speak as little as possible now.
We still have 49 minutes.
Yeah. So I'm going to quickly add to that. You know, so one of the things that, and it's a very distracted audience, you know that, not you people, you're very yeah, but the
That's the kind of humor we need.
yeah, but the readers, okay, they've got all sorts of things that distract them, and then you try to slip in a book in the middle. You know, you say that this is great. But the other thing that is developing, and it's a really good trend, is non-fiction. And I think that's where we're really attempting to bring in a lot of fun. Because I think kids don't want pages after pages about something that they want to read about. Say it's a dinosaur, for instance. But so, you know, bringing in the visual aspect, that becomes really important. Bringing in the fun element, that's really important. But keeping it really short and snappy, I think that is the most important, because you want the kid to get to the third page, the fourth page. So you do it in a way that, you know, you distribute. And I think one of the series that, and to go back to, you know, the internationally popular books, the horribles, you know, the horrible histories, the murderous maths. I mean, by the titles, kids are going to want to pick up those kind of books. So I think even publishing in India, when you're looking at non-fiction as as an area to develop, that's it. That's one of the things you try to do, is bring in fun into, you know, non-fiction. So that's, and I think we're doing it fairly successfully. I think kids are consuming a lot of Indian content, and they're also, you know, I think parents do have an appetite for that as well. So yeah, that is.
To Richa's point, you know, I have just a slight bit of disagreement there in the sense, and I'm deliberately bringing it, right, so that there's some, right. So it wasn't that we are naturally not tuned to bring up funny and humorous book. Go back to our childhood days. Everybody would have a different stage of being a child, but go back to my childhood days. Chacha Chaudhary was amazing.
Yes, true.
And look at the Chacha Chaudhary. I told you the 4 criteria. It ticked all the 4 criteria. So kids of today engage with that. Kids of today engage with that. Kids of past engaged with that. And that was done by an Indian. Pran was the author, if I remember correctly. Right? Not the film actor Pran. The 4 criteria was, first was humor. So Chacha Chaudhary was full of humor. Characters you would want to be like, they're smart. So there was a Sabu who was like Hulk. Now children know Hulk, but Sabu was the Hulk then. Right? And Chacha Chaudhary, jiska dimag computer se tej chalta tha, jab hame computer pata nahi tha kya hota. Right? Then they were solving a problem. They were always solving a problem. Right? And the 4th was, there was always something new that you learned, right? Forget about everything else. Every time you had some fact about Sabu, because Sabu came from Jupiter, right? So you were learning something. So it was done. It's somewhere that we, in that whole bargain, I'll come back to that, sorry Sohini, that one leg on fire and one leg on ice, to balance between the audience, which was the parents, the teachers and students. We just lost it somewhere. And look at it, Horribles, Tina mentioned, right? Horribles is one series which is loved by even teachers. Right? Now, go back to Geronimo Stilton. Geronimo Stilton is loved by parents, loved by teachers and loved by students. Only one problem that they have is spelling incorrect. अरे word भी incorrect है. Fab mouse कोई word ही नहीं होता. Fame house भी नहीं होता. that's something that we will have to work towards. And work is happening. It might require a lot more effort from people sitting here. So the problem is not outside somewhere. We have to solve it first.
I'd like to add to what Neeraj said. So I think also what Tina said, that, a lot of work is happening in the space of, creating these visual rich formats, especially for the reluctant reader, because there is, again, not one kind of reader. You have to cater to people who don't engage with text-heavy books, or, the silliness of it. Like, we've just done a series, and it's called the Syllabally Reader, Syllabally series. We've branded it the Syllabally series, keeping that in mind. So a lot of work is happening, and there are some brilliant authors in India writing for it. You spoke about the horrible histories, and we recently did a series called History Unpacked with Sai Sudha, under the Duckbill imprint, which is essentially exactly horrible history, but with Indian history. But I think the struggle is, we've done all of this, and we are experimenting and doing, with that right intent, like creating that. Why are we not getting the same scale? So, so when you try doing these things, and, and they're still just selling those 3,000, 4,000 copies, after a point, you really feel, are we on the right track? Yes. So the question is, it's not like work's not happening, it's not like silly books are not there. Why are they not being discovered in the same way as other books are and international books are? Why is a child still picking up an international book over the Indian edition? So is there why is that the natural preference? Mm-hmm. So I guess we all struggle with that, and I don't have a yes or no answer for it, and maybe this is the right platform to engage with that too. But I really wanted to say that a lot of work is already happening, and it's not like it's also organic, because authors have come back to us. It's not like, oh, today I feel we should do this book, so I will get a writer. That's happening. But organically we've seen authors coming to us with a lot of beautiful, fun books. But then the numbers speak for themselves.
So just one line I'll add, because that will throw open the discussions in a much wider way. That's the why we need to find an answer for. The answer does not lie in should we experiment with something else. I think we collectively need to find the answer of why that's not happening.
No, 100%, which is what I was going to say. I know right now we have librarians and teachers and bookstores missing from this conversation, and I'd love to open it later. I can see Sangeeta there. I can see so many people there who will have great insight for us as well. And so in the next 13 minutes, we'll open it up for a more wider discussion as well. I'd love to hear from people in the audience as well. Parents, teachers, librarians, journalists, every bookstore owners, students. We'd love to hear from there. But I think for a second, let's get into that speculation of that why. Maybe this is a place, because it is a roundtable, right? We are talking about how do we find new readers. Is it bilingual books? Is it looking more at languages? Is it, what is it? I'd love to sort of take that space right now to speculate about that why are we not, what are we missing? We come back to that idea of what is that gap, and why are we not able to reach those readers?
I'll take.
Please speculate away.
Okay. So I think fun books, humor, we've done a lot in the past. We've never had the few thousand copies situation, so I want to break that notion. I also want to bring that 70% of the India actually lives down, which brings the language aspect of it. Quite a lot of what we would have produced, we have a 700 plus book catalog, and I can happily claim little over, probably under a little 100. Under 100 would be like a 2 million copies sold. But again, I think language is something that really helps. But I must also tell you that the English and Hindi languages, talking of numbers, contribute to about 60%, and 40% goes into the languages. So that is also there. The reader sitting down there, one, of course, what they want to read, they get, and in the language of comfort, when they get, the tendency to read more comes in, right? So I think it is, it's possible, but language is not only the thing. Maybe in our case, I would say that it's also the price. It's the situation. As a non-profit, we're there and we work with the large stake government foundations and programs that we are able to do. But yeah, when you are giving more, and we have seen that books really children are really wanting to put their choices on. We have worked in 500 villages in northern India, and we gave complete choice to the children. And they built their own first 25 books list, which was completely, going back to what you said. So it's there, and I think the numbers are possible. See, I think the Nielsen data in the children's publishing, if you had, I think the previous year that some report came in, it says that the children's publishing, the pleasure reading space is about 1% contribution in terms of the revenues in India. So imagine, there is so much so to do for us. I see that as an opportunity of 99%. 92% of the publishing in India happens to be academic only. Then the journals, and then you have the trade and the other, stuff. Children's publishing is 1%. So there's a tremendous scope. I think we need to, like what Neeraj was saying, I would say that we should use these forums to play collectively, play to our strengths. How do we go down the line to really reach? I'm happy, we're very open to be riding on each other's back and kind of making it possible. So it's possible. Numbers, economies of scale have proven that you could do it. So if you have a 299 price tag and you have 1 million copies, probably 99 rupees might work, right? So no, it's proven in the, I beg to differ. It's proven in the world. When you're looking at 1 million and you're looking at 100 million and you're looking at a $10 chip to a 50 cents chip, you have to think. I'm in the Cokes, and there's so many examples in the world. Yeah.
But in case, okay. So one of the things that people love saying about India, and my numbers will be a little fuzzy, but people love saying that, India is such a big market. The population is so massive, but the reading population out of that, even within Indian languages, is so small. So then how are we getting to this number that you're talking about? Because I'll give you an example of, like, when I was with PB itself, we had gone to Guwahati to a little library. There were 30 kids there, and out of those 30 kids, one child could read. Most of those kids were going to school, but they were there at the library because the library was a safe space for them. It was a space of play for them. And it was a space where someone was reading out stories to them, right? So then, when this is, as you said, the 70%, this is the 70% of the country, where are we then getting these numbers from? And that brings us back to the whole idea of nurturing new readers. So then, what does that look like? How are we then building those readers itself to reach that 99 rupees mein 1 million copies? And I'd love to pass the mic on to everybody else as well. No?
Yeah. So I think I would say that if I'm talking about 1 million or 2 million copies, and I'm talking, again, that's a very minuscule number given the stats we have, right? I think there are a lot of enablers or influencers and organizations who are doing reading related promotions down there. There, whether it is the Prathams or many such foundations. Room to Read has been doing a lot of work around it in terms of building reading for pleasure in libraries. So it's not that, things are not happening. Things are happening. I'm saying, imagine if I'm claiming and things are happening to that extent, and I can claim 1 million over 2 decades as a cumulative number, the possibility lies. It's not that it doesn't lie. I think it needs a little more effort to walk an extra mile, go beyond the comfort zones, build. I think I was just talking, I don't know, I was talking with you or with her, that, we need to first identify, our problem is that we need to sell more, we need to reach more, we need to bring awareness more. What is that we are trying to do? These are our problem statements, right? So selling, is good, but I'm saying, what is that we are doing to really make things happen? When I said the 70%, I'm talking of the 400 million children in the country. The urban-centered things, 100 million audience is what you're talking. The 300 million, when you reach, obviously will deliver you some numbers. So there's a possibility. I pass it on to the fellows.
I have another not so nice question to ask, which is, you mentioned, Room to Read, you mentioned Pratham books. Does then the onus of cultivating those younger readers fall on the not-for-profit sector and not on the book publishing industry itself, because what is that industry body then that we have or don't have, who's then addressing this? So for example, if you look at, in the UK, they have that campaign, right, Books Are My Bag, where all bookstores are coming together to say, okay, now we are all just committed to creating readers. We're opening our doors up, we're working as an industry body. So then, as an industry, you know, where does the onus then lie? Because it can't just be CSR initiatives are helping create readers, and then we are piggybacking on that. What, as an industry, and this might not be a great question, might not be a polite question, but I think it is still something that we need to answer.
Everyone is doing, and I, of course, would let them speak. Everyone is doing, it's not that. And I completely agree with you, the UK, the Book Trust, and many other examples. We attempted one of the things by creating story walls so that children, you know, come in those reading sort of environments and get encouraged to read. There are book benches which are being done in the Europe to encourage to come and sit. It's a book bench. So, you know, there are initiatives. I'm saying things are possible, provided we kind of, you know, get together. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, some of the NGOs are doing brilliant work in, you know, creating these spaces and bringing out the books. Of course, price advantage, scale, multiple languages, all of that is there. But I think if you look at readership and creating readership as a larger goal, which I think everybody has, and it's about creating that deep connect with reading. And it'll only come from not just, you know, a picture book, or it'll come from multiple formats, it'll come from giving readers choice, it'll come from, you know, making different kinds of books accessible and, you know, like exposing children to all of these formats and genres and, you know, different subject matter for that, you know, so that, you know, they can then make that choice and find their own, you know, maybe the genre and the format that they love to. And so there is a lot more work that needs to be done. And I think trade publishers are pretty much doing just that, creating that large body of work, creating multiple formats, creating different, you know, books for every age group of reader, different kind of reader, and giving them the choice to pick a book that works for them.
No, absolutely. I would like to add another small point to this, and I'd love to also hear from both Prajwal and Ujan here, because you're both also published authors here, which is the dreaded M word, marketing, right? Which is what you spoke about, you know, building awareness, etc. I think the biggest thing that everybody in publishing struggles with is marketing. So what does that look like for kids? And how is marketing then actually a tool to create new readership also? And are we leveraging that? Like, are we using marketing to create new readers as opposed to just, we have very small budgets, I know, I'm very aware of that, but still, you know, like what does that look like? You know, I'd love to also hear from both of you.
You know, Smit, this is something I think a lot of us are constantly struggling with. I mean, our marketing, whatever we do on social media in terms of kids' books, I think we are targeting the parents. Okay, I don't think we are targeting the kids, and so that's a bit problematic. I mean, yeah, you know, my publicist has asked me to do the most ridiculous things, like pose for a picture with a dog simply because there is a dog in my book. And, you know, so when the press release goes out, there's me and this beautiful little dog, a golden retriever, etc., etc. But we're not looking at it from the perspective of reaching the kids. It's all about reaching the parents here. And again, I haven't really dived into the world of, you know, of being a children's book writer fully yet, but I've always questioned, you know, what the marketing is like, what the process entails. I mean, I've had people ask me, oh, how many schools are you in touch with? How many principals do you know? How many teachers do you know? And it's fascinating. It's so very far removed from the marketing for adult books that I've done so far. Ujan, I don't know what your experience has been.
Just target the kids. No, just target the kids. No, so our book was very interesting in that, like, the initial forethought was not, it's not a kid's book per se. That being said, the way it's been kind of produced has been with the lens of it being a very universally acceptable sort of narrative. What is interesting is that you said something about Chacha Chaudhary. Now, Chacha Chaudhary is, again, one of those, I don't want to say lost, but like it's an IP that's now seeing a resurgence, right? Like your Phantom and your all those kind of books, or Horrible Histories, or Magic School Bus, all those kind of things are IPs that I don't think have been explored in the Indian context enough, and I think that is something that's really something that we tried to do. Original Indian context, set characters, alternate history, set in the Indian context, where you're actually doing the job of also bringing out that curiosity and adding a little more in terms of like, you don't want to sound preachy or educative or whatever that is, but you want to be in a space which is interesting enough for people to be like, oh, like you said, like you get past the first page, and for a picture book that's fine because it'll be like 30 pages and that's it, right? But like if you're in the realm of a 250 page sort of graphic novel or something like that, you know, like how do you create that sense of mysticism and like intrigue where the kid himself or herself is like, oh, okay, now I want to know, just like an adult reader would. And I think that is so interesting to kind of understand from like actually seeing kids come up to you and be like, okay, what is this about? Because again, like I said before, like kids aren't asking questions. So it'll always be like, in a marketing sense, you'll be like, hey, read my book. You like this book? Here, take it. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, what is it? You know, so it just requires that initial like buy-in, and then you know that with a kid, you've like, I've trapped this kid. Like I've got it right here, you know, like, and then you don't really need like the parent, right? Like then they'll be like, no, book, I want. It's just like a toy then, right? Like what you said, like it's just a product, and then once you've made that initial connection, that's why it's so important to have like those creative IPs that are now just like seeing this resurgence, and that's what we're trying to do, and like hopefully that builds and builds, and we have so many more of those. Yeah.
I can chime in for 1 second. Can everyone hear me? I speak to a lot of my authors about marketing, and they said that they're very nervous to talk to parents, but they're very excited to talk to children, because they just know that the minute they're in front of a child, they'll be able to convince them of why that book is fun and exciting. But with parents, they get very anxious about it. So I think that just ties into what we've been saying so far.
Would you also like to go a little bit into the kind of books that you are seeing writers send to you, and what that says about how writers are also approaching are writers thinking about the readers out there? Like, because I think a lot of writers often don't. So how do you navigate that? How do you sort of bring that back to, okay, whom is this book for? Like, how do you navigate that as an agent?
The submissions I've gotten so far are a mixed bag. A lot of them that I've liked so far are clearly sort of parents, teachers, librarians, people who've interacted with kids their whole life and sort of know and understand what they want. And of course, there's always submissions that are sort of books that people wish they had when they were growing up. But I'm very drawn to the books that are being written by people who actively are thinking about children, from being around them, from understanding what children might need more, or what they're just responding to.
I'd like to sort of take what you said and sort of open it out to the audience as well. And I'd love to, I'll just take questions as well, but I'd love to sort of maybe, Sangeeta, if you wanna, I'd love to sort of throw that question to you about, you have a lot of nostalgia sort of thing as well, right? Our parents are just like, oh, I loved reading this, so I think my child would like reading this as well, or I want to write about this because I enjoyed this as a child, and so I would, do kids respond to that? And just, you know, what is your response as a bookseller and someone who has a brilliant children's bookstore? How would you react to this entire conversation? Because I just feel like it'll be nice to have a bookseller's perspective as well on this idea of nurturing readers. I don't think our mics will reach. Sorry, I should give you some heads up.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks for this. I'm very proud. I have a small children's bookstore in Bombay, very small little space, curated bookshop, and I'm very happy to say I have all the big publishing houses, the Penguins, the HarperCollins, and the Scholastics, but also very proud to have books by Pickle Yolk and Pratham and all the other small. We represent 30 independent Indian publishers who sadly today are not still seen in the retail stores. So I think retail is still doing the easy mainstream books, and the curated books, the ones that you all are taking so much trouble to do, you know, the Penguins and the Harpers, are still not getting the retail shelf space. And we're very happy that people come to Kahani Tree and say that they can't find these books at the Crosswords and the Tidal Waves, and they come looking for these books at Kahani Tree. So yes, that is availability. And discoverability of books is only happening in the small independent bookstores. Unfortunately, not enough of us, and it's ironic that Amazon is sitting right here after destroying independent bookstores. This session has been the irony of it all. So I'm looking at Amazon and saying, guys, you're the ones who've created this problem. Because discoverability is only happening in the Indian bookstores. We know our books. We know what lies between the covers. It's not just where the book is placed in the store, but we also know what's between the covers, so we are able to recommend books and find the readers. And yes, of course, we enjoy the tussle that happens between children and parents. We have to play that fine balance between this. I have to share, Neeraj, after all the data that you give me, we don't keep Geronimo at the store.
It's fine. These books that you're carrying are good for us.
We carry our other books. We carry books by Asha Nehmia and all the other wonderful Vibha Batra and all the other authors who don't get shelf space.
Geronimo can be sold by Amazon.
Exactly.
Those cannot be, so you are doing a good job.
We tell readers and children who come into the store looking for a Geronimo, saying that he's gone on a long holiday from Kahani Tree, but so that they start looking at other books. So, yes.
And Neeraj, it's not because of the spellings.
So you could have just done the kudos to Amazon. They will sell that.
Chintan, Neeraj, do you want to say
So
add
I just
something?
wanted to
Then
say,
go Chintan.
Sangeeta, the Kahani Tree is one of the finest stores that exists, and in some ways, what you were telling in terms of only these kind of stores are stocking the right kind of stuff, and they can talk because they know what's there between the cover pages. Reminds me of that movie You've Got Mail, and it's exactly the same story that goes on between upmarket retail chain and an independent bookstore.
The ending of You've Got Mail wasn't very nice. You know?
we will change the ending in the book that we publish.
No, I think I also just want to say, Sangeeta, you've, from your experiences, I think we would have interacted some 15, 17 years back. And I still remember that was your first visit to Bologna. We were talking about how the children's section is being represented and what is getting done in our country and not really getting that needed attention. You're a true passionate, reading ambassador, and I think it requires, she really gets angry if the book is not available.
We need that. I think we need a lot more.
We need people like you to push us to really make things happen.
So I'm going to exercise director's privilege for 5 minutes, and bear with me. I think this has been a great discussion. The fact that everybody who's sitting here is truly a committed children's publishing aficionado is evident. But I would really like to raise sort of questions which have been going through my mind as I was listening to all my colleagues. And first of all, I really want to commend Richa. I don't know whether all of you know or not, but single-handedly this lady here, she did a most amazing illustrations exhibition in Delhi, which was there for 15 days, which was way too little. And it took me back to what Ujan said, which is that you first judge a book by its cover or whatever when you're a child. So the importance of illustrations in nurturing new readers, playing with language. And increasingly, we are losing the ability to play with our mother tongues, which is why there was one publisher who totally dominated one set of prizes that I was looking at. The Tata Trust does something called the Parag Honor List. And I was looking at the Hindi submissions, and it was totally dominated by Jugnu Prakashan. And Sushil, I very much wanted him to be here, but he didn't come because he's at the World Book Fair. He wants to sell books, which is a good thing. So I forgave him. But you know, what Jugnu Prakashan is managing to do is to rope in the Gulzar, is to rope in the Alan Shaw, and create the kind of whimsical Hindi books which are actually going to nurture the new readers. And many of them are the ones that Himanshu was talking about, who are in the bottom of the pyramid. And I think that possibility still somewhere exists. We haven't quite missed the boat. In another 20 years, we would have missed the boat because we are increasingly becoming a monolingual country for various reasons, which we cannot go into over here. But it is the play with Bangla, it is the play with Hindi, it is the ability to play with language and having authors who are willing to take that risk and be silly. So it is, you know, when the publishers are allowed, they're allowing the authors to be silly and the authors have the courage to be silly and they have the hold over the language to be silly. So I think that is when all those three things come together is when you create real silly books. And, you know, it's only when you have mother tongue readers first that you create readers for life. Because this whole business of जी हम अंग्रेजी पढ़ेंगे क्योंकि हमको IIT में बैठना है अगले साल, you know, so it's when it comes to that, you know, that is where you lose your reader for pleasure. So you know, how do we find that reader for pleasure? How do we clone Richa, about 5 of her, so that she does many more illustration exhibitions? How do we clone Gulzar Saab and, you know, many people like that who know how to play with language? So I just think, you know, I wanted to sort of underline some of these things which I was thinking about, because I think it all begins with language, and whether it's visual language or it's spoken language. And until you're able to play with the sound of the language, you've no fun without that. You know.
There are a lot of researchers have proven, like if children are exposed to literature in their own mother tongue in the formative years, they become better learners for life. So in whatever they do. So it's not that I think the English and the other languages come in at a much later stage, but I think the aspirational need somewhere takes a lot of things away.
Yeah, I feel like we've come a full circle with that.
Just one thing I'll add.
Okay.
To your point, Manisha, and you talked about Gulzar Saab, and we were talking about marketing earlier, right? So one thing that comes to my mind is, you know, sometimes we think marketing, and you talked about low budgets, right? It's not about high budgets required for marketing, it's about right kind of marketing, right? And it reminds me of two things. Gulzar Saab ki kitab thi Ek Mein Do, right? Now, if you look at it, if you listen to Gulzar Saab's own recital of it, that just does wonders. And if you just promote that recital, it does wonders to that book, right? Similarly, Scholastic New Zealand published a book which was published 20 years, 2018 Scholastic US took it, and it was published 20 years earlier. Then Scholastic US took it, and there was a librarian grandmother from Ireland who was just reading that book to a 3-month-old child with the child in the hand, right? And she just loved that book, and the whole recital of that book just went viral. It became New York Times bestseller. It was called Wonky Donkey, right? And it was just because of that one video, right? But that was not staged. That was organic. So you need to just find the right passionate people to be used in the marketing. That's when the magic would happen. So magic can happen and you don't need budgets for that.
Okay. I think Chintan's been dying to say something, so please. And then we'll take more questions as well.
My name is Chintan. I love writing about children's books, and I also used to be a school teacher. I was uneasy about a lot of things that I heard in the panel discussion. I'll try to name a few. Firstly, Richa, when you said that, you know, when children pick a prize and when adults pick a prize, it's different. The example of the Neve Book Prize shows us that children and adults pick the same book, which was Mamta Naini's book on a Dalit cricketer who was excluded because of caste discrimination. And I think that is something really worth looking at, because I think what we were doing here, we were drawing this dichotomy between what's pleasurable and what's serious. It's not necessarily oppositional, it can happen together. I think this whole business of creating new readers is not only about adding more numbers, it's also about looking within the publishing industry and seeing who are we excluding. What kind of social, economic realities are we not addressing? Are the current lot of authors, illustrators, editors, publishers belong to certain communities? You know, why is it, like, often when we talk about children's literature, why don't we talk about the books that Yogesh Maitreya has been doing for Pratham Books, for example, which address the material reality of caste discrimination, or even the Shayantan Datta's book that is about Grace Banu's, experience as a Dalit trans woman. People from these communities are not often represented in children's publishing. These are seen as, diversity is seen as something that needs to be done in terms of product, not in terms of hiring. And when that does not happen, it means that we will think of pleasure only as something that is very bougie, that is something that is escapist. Why can't pleasure also stem from the reality of people who are struggling with, poverty, discrimination, persecution, etc.? The Different Tales books that Anveshi did with DC Books, those were books by Dalit, Bahujan, Adivasi, Muslim writers talking about those experiences, and all of these had an element of fun. So I think it's poverty of imagination on the part of publishers, editors, and marketing teams. Also the authors who are often writing because, well, either they love to tell stories or because they, that's something that they're doing because they need to pass their time. There are also authors who've told me that because, they're not the primary breadwinner in the house and they need something to do, which is why they're doing. So, I mean, are people publishing books of these kinds as well and not thinking about, what it is to nurture readership? I remember Urvashi Butalia talking here itself at Jaipur Bookmark about how people think in terms of, just getting marketing and buying more books, but what is it about to nurture taste? What is it about getting people to appreciate new kinds of books? There is a lot of work involved in that, which activist movements are doing, but our publishers really aligning with them. Sorry, I was just holding all of this back and came like this storm, but so thank you to Jaipur Bookmark for organizing a children's roundtable.
Girish, I was carrying this book. This is 6 indigenous artists, BL artists, and Fard, and they're just talking about their hopes, aspirations, and dreams. So I think we're not really hearing a lot. Stories can come out actually from ground a lot.
Can I add a little bit to what Chintan said? Yeah. So, you know what, when we're building a list or we're trying to make it as comprehensive as possible, one of the things you want to do is to bring in, local language culture, the color of that. And for us as publishers, sometimes one of the stumbling blocks is we need those books to be brought to us, for us to actually have the access to see what is the publishing, what are these jewels that are in, the regions. How do we get them? So sometimes, you'll be pitched, and a lot of times you'll be getting Bengali in translation because that's one of the most, I think most commonly pitched, languages in translation to us. So it's not, I think we all feel the need to bring these books out, but it's also, I think there is that problem of not actually getting to see them. So I feel that is something that really should be looked at in a larger sort of way, that how do we enable those to come to us. And one other point too, about the marketing aspect, I think marketing and salespeople are now driven off their feet. They're really having a tough time because there's so much good publishing out there, and I think once you have a book in a bookstore, and especially like a Sangeeta's bookstore, for instance, where everything is so carefully curated, it's also about something that is, becomes backlist very quickly. We always worry about that. You spend a year working on a picture book, for instance. It's beautiful, it's lovelily produced and everything, but it has to make way for another book. You know, so it's about, you really need the support of a bookstore which continues to say, no, this is a great book. It might be a year old, but it continues to be that, you know. So I think and so for sales and marketing, they really do have their work cut out for them these days. So, you know, by the number of books that they're publishing.
And just one point to what you said, Chintan, we can't talk about the entire catalog, and I can tell you about all the publishing houses because we carefully curate a list for our book fairs, keeping in mind all other publishers' books also. So there are books being done, the kind of books that you're talking about, and there are being placed, right? So it isn't that it's not happening. It's just that the discussion, you know, the way the discussion flew, probably we did not get an opportunity to talk about it, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's happening, and I would be happy to share with you those kind of things, and I'll connect with you offline. But we will share it with you. It's not that it's not happening; it is happening.
I think we have 10 minutes, so there are lots of other conversations we can also take offline then and have very interesting debates. We'll take some questions. Yeah, we'll take some questions from some more people as well. Please.
Hi everyone. मुझे रिचा और हिमांशु की ही बात ज़्यादा समझ में आई, बाकी थोड़ी सी बातें मुझे समझ में नहीं आई। मैं एक बहुत सिंपल सी चीज़ जो मैंने एक्सपीरियंस की है वो मैं शेयर करना चाहूँगा। हम जो बात कर रहे हैं कि बच्चों तक बुक्स नहीं पहुँच रही है या बच्चों तक चीज़ें नहीं पहुँच रही, मैं उदयपुर से हूँ और वहाँ आसपास में आदिवासी बेल्ट है, 50 किलोमीटर्स में बहुत सारे आदिवासी रीजन हैं और वहाँ जो लैंग्वेजेस है वो बहुत अलग है, हिंदी से तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा अलग है। अभी मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जब हम उन रीजन्स में काम करते हैं तो वहाँ बुक्स तो है ही नहीं, तो कैसे पढ़ेंगे बच्चे, वो एक बहुत बड़ा प्रश्न हो गया। बुक्स ही नहीं है। दूसरा, जो बुक्स हैं वो सब हिंदी में हैं और हिंदी वाली बुक्स भी उदयपुर तक सीमित हैं। उदयपुर में भी जहाँ बुक्स हैं तो आप मान लीजिए खाली क्रॉसवर्ड है और उसमें भी बच्चों का सेक्शन नहीं है, आपको कुछ नहीं मिलेगा। तो फिर हम ये जो सारा स्ट्रगल है कि कैसे पहुँचा जाए, कैसे बात की, वो वहीं ख़त्म हो जाता है कि कुछ है ही नहीं। बीच में एक छोटा सा प्रोग्राम हुआ था जिसमें कुछ बुक्स ट्रांसलेट होकर आई थी रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस में, मेवाड़ी में या वागड़ में। अभी उसमें बहुत बड़ा एक ग्लिच था। उस बुक में एक कहानी थी बच्चों की जिसमें एक फल था और वो था स्ट्रॉबेरी। तो वो जब ट्रांसलेट होके आया, वो जब आया तो स्टिल उसमें स्ट्रॉबेरी था। अभी वो बुक जैसे ही बच्चे ने हाथ में ली और उसने खोला, या टीचर जब उसको पढ़ा रहा है और वो स्ट्रॉबेरी आता है तो टीचर को भी समझ में नहीं आता है कि ये फल है, फूल है, सब्जी है, क्या है। तो आप अब सोचिए कि हम मतलब कितना दूर हैं जो हम यहाँ बात कर रहे हैं कि ये प्रॉब्लम है, फर्स्ट टच या फर्स्ट इम्प्रेशन, या वो तो बहुत बात की बात हो गई, मतलब है ही नहीं। मुश्किल से पहुँचा तो भी ऐसा पहुँचा कि वो साउथ की कोई कहानी है जिसमें कुछ ऐसा बन रहा है और वो बच्चा दिख रहा है कि ये क्या है, मतलब कैसे होता है, कहाँ होता है कुछ। तो मतलब जा भी रहा है वो, ऐसा जा रहा है, और पहली बात तो जा ही नहीं रहा, जा रहा है तो फिर ऐसा जा रहा है कि जिसका कोई सेंस नहीं है। तो वो किताबें वो शेल्फ से बाहर ही नहीं आती हैं, वो टीचर ही नहीं निकालता, क्योंकि टीचर को लगता है कि मैं क्या पढ़ाऊँगा, मैं इस कहानी को कैसे पढ़ूँगा, क्योंकि मैं ही कनेक्ट नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ। तो मुझे लगता है रीजनल चीज़ों पे या लोकल लैंग्वेजेस पे थोड़ा सा काम होना चाहिए। इसलिए मुझे लगा हिंदी में बोलने से थोड़ा सा मैं उसके करीब जा पाऊँगा। इफ़ आई वुड हैव टेकन ऑल दैट थिंग इन इंग्लिश तो मैं और दूर हो जाता उस रीजनल से। तो मुझे थोड़ा सा वो लग रहा था बहुत देर से। हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, मैं इसको समझ रहा हूँ। मुझे लगा कि ये शायद थोड़ा सा ऐड कर देगा उसमें।
No, it's a really important point. Thank you so much for bringing this up. I think there was another question here and then here. So.
Hi, I'm Komal Thakur, and a first-time author, but I've been in the television industry for upwards of 25 years, creating content for the masses at 9 p.m. on the weekend. I see a lot of similarities in the publishing industry and in the television industry, because what you are pushed to create by a network, what you want to create as a creative person, and what the bottom line and the top line, and where's the marketing, and where does it all fit in the middle of all of that. So just coming from that space, and I've also work with rural families on farming. I teach them that. I've interacted with a lot of rural children. Since the topic came around about languages, right? And it's something even I've always believed that if you don't really learn in your own language first, how do you move on? But what I've really found in my personal experience, that whenever I go to the village, we work in Palghar area near Mumbai, and they are Marathi-speaking children. They can barely hold a conversation with me in any other language, but they like, ye madam English baat karti hai, and Hindi mein they manage some words with me. But they're all watching either dubbed into Hindi or English cartoons on television all the time. All the time. And when I look at that and I'm saying, but yes, they don't have access to books, but when the teacher who lives right next door to the farm where we work at, and there's an Anganwadi there, and when she comes out and calls them, they are very happy to come and do hands-on activities. They're very happy to sing the songs about the rain and to do all of that. But as soon as they're away from that, it's straight in front of the television. Now they're beginning to get access to the mobile phones and to watch content there. And just going through the discussion today, because we're talking about nurturing new readers, and I'm very new as being an author, but just building on the other experience that I have in television of how we keep family viewing together, I'm wondering is this because we're lacking the marriage between book publishing and all the other formats that right now they're distracting the children, but why is the international stuff so appealing? Look, style, feel, yes, but also you see it everywhere, and you want characters that look like that character on TV. You want characters that look like something that you saw. It may not be the same cartoon, but he looks like that. And so I see that kids are drawn more to the international books because that's the aspiration of what they're watching on television, what they're watching everywhere. And I feel as an Indian, the publishing industry, I'm very new, I'm learning about it, but I really miss that. I'm like, but if we don't work together from being audiovisual to being games to being different, we were having a bit of a conversation about that, the gateway drug will have to change. It has to be a gateway from somewhere else, because I do believe that children love reading, and we've all been talking about that given that access, they will read. But when they choose themselves, I slightly disagree with that, because I think they choose based on what they're exposed to, and I'm not sure what they're being exposed to. Everyone's exposure levels are very different in different parts of the country depending on the languages. And so whose responsibility is this? Is it the parents, the publishers, the NGOs, to create an ecosystem to nurture it? Would we not need to start thinking 360? Would we not need to start thinking that, I'm sure kids will love the books then. And will it be silly? Will it be fun? I'm sure it would be. So I just wanted to ask that question, that where is the space for that? Because there's never any money, and nobody's, even the television people won't have enough money.
I'll just open up the room for that question, then we'll quickly move on. So the idea of what does 360 look like then within publishing? And to the other point about what you spoke about, listening to a story as well. So if anyone wants to take this question of the 360 of the gateway drug of reading.
So 360 of nurturing readers, yes, would involve all stakeholders. But when you were defining the stakeholders, I think we need to remember at the heart of it would be the child. Right? Because often what happens is that we are connecting to all other stakeholders, and at that point of time we forget about the child. So we can't forget about the child. Ecosystem requires everybody. It requires parent. I talked about parent being the role model. It requires teachers, because there has to be talk about books. It requires the whole school environment, and it also requires the home environment. But the problem is, sometimes we'll pick up one thing and we'll say, ये lacking है, इसलिए नहीं हो रहा. But हमारे को उसका हल निकालना पड़ेगा. अगर घर में environment नहीं है, तो वो school में कैसे आएगा? तो कहीं ना कहीं हल निकालना पड़ेगा. जब आप डेफिशिएंट होते हैं विटामिन डी पे, तो डॉक्टर ये नहीं बोलता कि धूप में नहीं बैठोगे तो मर जाओगे, वो कहते नहीं बैठ सकते तो आप ये दवाई खा। सो कहीं ऑल्टरनेट्स ढूंढने पड़े, एंड आई एम ट्राइंग टू गेट टू हिंदी।
I think I just want to add to the 360-degree angle. Of course, like what Neeraj said, I completely agree. Every stakeholder needs to participate here. Karnataka is a perfect example. I'll give you why. The principal secretary in the Rural Development Panchayati Raj is Uma Mahadevan, who's herself an avid reader, promoter, a reading ambassador. The 6,000 gram panchayats, which is the absolute last mile child, she created very vibrant reading spaces for them. I'm so happy that we were part of that. And this was also something which happened post-COVID, where the reading, learning, and we saw, the changing curve, the parent-child stakeholder engagement changed. And at that point of time, bringing that, sort of lively, engaging reading spaces. I mean, I still remember her words that she said, we'll open the temples if we don't have spaces. We'll make, the Gram Panchayat, the Panchayat's office as a library. But we should definitely attempt. And I think to add more value to it, we also provided, as part of the library, books in Braille to be inclusive, so that, no child is kind of left behind. So there are perfect examples. I think it's just that it requires replication and I think Uma Mahadevan has been carrying that bandwagon across the country in the Festival of Libraries, in different states. The model is being discussed, and those tweaks, I think there is a possibility provided everyone comes together.
I'll just say that our time actually is up, so we'll take the conversation even more off stage than we already are, because there are more questions. We'll address the idea of multimedia that you were talking about as well. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming here and engaging in this conversation.